This is the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels like they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across the table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. In last week's episode, we covered steps 8 and 9, which are specifically focused in on creating your list of people to make amends to and then going through the action in the process of making direct amends to individuals that you have harmed or hurt in your alcoholic ways. And we are going to continue on through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in this episode. And to get started here, I want to once again center on why I'm doing this. There was a lot of unknowns for me as I looked into potential solutions or options for addressing my issues with alcohol when I was struggling. I was doing this work largely alone. And by work, I genuinely mean just struggling and spinning my wheels, trying to figure out what the hell is going on with me, and why can't I control my alcoholism, and why am I in such a pit of despair, despite, by all intents and purposes, life going pretty well for me. And so I just want to make these steps in this program and recovery as a whole approachable. And I think this, a potential creation of a softer approach into the world of recovery is unmasking a lot of the misunderstandings, confusion, or unknowns about the world of recovery and about some of the most impactful practices, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous kind of undoubtedly being the highest rate of success and most proficient method of addressing addiction issues. And that is just purely through its survivability, what I would say, and how long it has lasted, and how many, quite honestly, millions of people it has helped. So we are nearing the end of the 12 steps. And in today's episode, we're going to look specifically at step 10 and step 11. Steps 10, 11, and 12 can kind of be thought of sort of the maintenance, like you're doing a lot of the, what I'm going to call like first pass of the work in steps 1 through 9. And as we'll get into here in the episode, steps 10, 11, and 12 are ensuring that you are keeping your practice active. The step work, surprising as it was to many folks, myself included, the step work is a continual and lifelong pursuit. You are never done with the steps. Even though steps 10, 11, and 12 can kind of be seen as like this maintenance practice, there are instances, and I know of quite a few in my own small home group in AA, where people with many years of recovery decide to go through the steps again and start all over at one, and genuinely ask themselves, like, am I being honest in every single way I can be in my life? And so the approach here and just like the journey here is never ending, which I want to acknowledge can feel burdensome when you're on the entry point of recovery. But having the amount of time that I have, I just want to stress and say it is the most incredible experience and worthwhile work that you will ever do. And it truly and profoundly will change your life. So to kick off this episode, I'm going to just read the steps as they are written. So starting with step 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Now, I'm going to jump ahead into more of the detailed writing within the book regarding these particular steps. And I'm actually going to step back a couple paragraphs and reread the promises that I ended the episode on steps 8 and 9 about, again, because the promises are so powerful and so important. So I'm going to start there. To the book. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. I'm going to come out of the book and the reading at this point and just discuss that last paragraph in particular, which summarizes in a large way step 10, which again can largely be seen as a maintenance cycle. And the way I think about it is doing steps 1 through 9 the first time is like learning or practicing and picking up any new skill set. It takes a lot of effort on the first pass, and it requires you to be incredibly particular about just the basic fundamentals and understanding those mechanisms of doing the work and accomplishing the task. And really what is pushed for in step 10, in my understanding of it and the way that I have viewed it and practiced it in my own life, is the path kind of got created like within your mental system or within your brain. Like you charted out this new path of, dealing with resentments, of working through that, of feeling a connection with God or higher power, and then of making amends to people, and basically like cleaning house and cleansing those aspects of your life that come up through the course of life, because life is life. So step 10 is there because if you just do steps 1 through 9 once, it's like cleaning your home, doing a really intensive deep clean of your home, and then walking away and assuming that even though your home is going to get lived in, it's never going to get dirty again. All of us know that's ridiculous in the physical sense with that example of of a home that's lived in, yet in our mental state and with our emotional disruptions and thought patterns, we assume that it's like, hey, if I do this work one time, like there is no one and done with recovery and with living in this manner. So step 10 is about that continuous cleansing process. And what the book does here is calls out 4 specific elements that you should look for in particular that are generally the root cause or like alarms of, call it emotional or spiritual disruption. And those are selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So the way that I practice step 10 or do the work of step 10 is monitor for those and recognize when I'm in a moment of feeling one of those. And I've detailed this in the podcast, but and in the newsletter as well. But back in July, I had what I called an emotional relapse. It was a time where I was really upset about something that went on in my life. And I had these hours where I just harbored this incredible resentment and started feeling intense fear and started falling into the thought pattern of manipulation and revenge and woe is me. And it required me to live in step 10, which is basically walk back through the previous steps and address that resentment, write it out. I had to go back and write out why I was feeling this particular resentment. And then I talked about it. I called my sponsor. I engaged with my sponsor and got his advice and his perception of it and his encouragement to continue working that through the steps. And then in the end, I apologize. I apologize to individuals that I got emotional with and upset with in the hours and the days after that initial emotional disruption. And I just really looked at and worked on letting go of the things I didn't control and centering myself on maintaining action and focus on the areas that I did control in my life. So with that, back to the book. By this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So I'm going to come out of the book and kind of overlay some of my experience and story there. And then I do want to revisit one sentence in particular from that section. But it's absolutely wild to say. And when I talk to people about it, I recognize and I know that people don't believe me when I say this. But from the day that I entered into recovery, I have not had a single urge or desire to drink, to consume alcohol, to have alcohol in my system. That is the honest to God truth. And as the book says, it is a miracle. Now, I would say in reflecting back on my story, I'm of the belief that the lack of desire or urges in the early days was largely driven out of fear. And I was very close to the memory and the emotions and the feelings of how things were progressing when I was drinking. And I think I was largely driven by fear during that time. And one just crystal clear example that I can think of is when I was being driven home by my close friend Zach from rehab. It was 6 a.m. in the morning, and we were a few blocks, maybe a half mile from my home, and we were stopped at the last stoplight before entering into the neighborhood. And there, sitting kitty corner across from us as we waited at the stoplight, was one of the gas stations that I always went to as one of my secondary or tertiary spots where I would buy alcohol. And I just got this sinking feeling inside my gut as I realized that alcohol and the availability of alcohol was something that would never be taken away from me in life, and that I was going to have to figure out how to deal with that reality. In that moment, I felt genuine fear. It drove me to pursue understanding and take action that eventually has led me to where I am today, where I am not anymore afraid and I am not cocky because I'm not talking about some big grand plan and timeline of abstinence where I can walk away from this recovery program and practices that I have found myself in. I am not afraid because I know that if I get up every single day and I focus on the practices that have placed me on this road to recovery, and I continue to love myself and to forgive myself, I know with a high level of confidence that I can get through those 24 hours regardless of what life and what God presents me with. That is the miracle in all of this. And I want to reread that last sentence of that paragraph once again. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. One last note on this. I've talked quite extensively, especially in early episodes of this podcast, about the pillars of recovery and the way that I think about these pillars in my life. And those pillars are physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness. This sentence hits on it, but one of the key learnings that I have had in my time in recovery is that if you maintain and if you progress and if you strengthen that spiritual pillar, the physical relapse becomes nearly impossible to have in your life, so long as that spiritual component stays fit. That is how I could manage through an emotional relapse that I had like this last summer and not go to drink and not even be compelled to drink. Because even though I had that emotional disruption and what I would call an emotional relapse, my spiritual fitness was still strong. And I woke up the next day and I put in the work to maintain and to strengthen that spiritual pillar. And then it allowed me to recover on the emotional front. Going back to the book. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. We ask especially for freedom of from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. So I'm going to come out of the book here, what this is describing in step 11. And actually, I want to prime the listeners with this. This is one of the biggest pushbacks that I have with the writing, especially in the first 164 pages here. And I'll get to the particular that I have. And it might be nitpicky, but what I'm going to do is speak specifically and solely to my experience as I have learned and as I have progressed. So what I'm about to say is not something that I'm grounded on believing for the rest of my life. However, it is something that I have found beneficial and helpful for me, especially in the early stages. And it felt needed going through what we were going through with Lucy. And so, again, just kind of summarizing this, step 11 really pushes for self-reflection in the evening, looking back at your day, and then in the morning, sort of a look ahead and grounding and intention setting on your day moving forward. What that has looked like and turned into for my own practice, and I'm actually going to start in the morning. I do journal every single morning, and my journal it's a specific kind of like self-guided journal called the Phoenix Planner, the Phoenix Journal. I'll link to it in the show notes. But one of the key aspects of it that I really like is the first prompt is it gives you basically from 5 a.m. until something like 11 p.m. at night. And it says, lay out your ideal day. Like, what would your ideal day look like? And then to go along with it, it has a task list where you can get down to like the tactical items that you want to get done in that day. The reason that I find this really helpful is I basically write out what would make today great. And guess what? Like, a lot of my days look exactly the same. But I have really come to love that in recovery. Like, routine is rewarding in a very big way. And so anyway, what I do in my practice is write down what that ideal day would look like, write down the accomplishments or the tasks that I want to do that day, and then kind of let it go and just focus on doing the most important thing first and just seeing how the rest of the day progresses. So that's kind of how I journal. There's a few more prompts within that journal and then some like open writing space that I generally take advantage of, but really that intention setting for the day is what I find most helpful and most key. I will fully admit I am still working at step 11 with regards to the reflection at night and what we'll get here in a bit with regards to the prayer. But on prayer in particular, the biggest pushback that I have found that I have, or I should say just challenge that I have to the thinking that's detailed in this book is this sentence. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Now, the reason I have a bit of pushback on that, I have found in my practice of prayer, three prayers that I go to constantly. I want to remind the listener again, I am not someone who can memorize things. I am also not someone who spitballs or just kind of improvises on prayer quite often. So the prayers that I go to are 1, the Serenity Prayer, 2, the Lord's Prayer, and then 3, what I have come to think about and call Lucy's Prayer. And Lucy's Prayer is the one where I actually allow myself to recognize and state the selfish desires that I have. And the structure of Lucy's Prayer came about as Alyssa and I had to go into the specialist's office week in and week out during her pregnancy with Lucy. And every single week, we never knew if Lucy would have a heartbeat that week. And so we would take a moment in the car together, in the parking lot, before we entered into the office for the ultrasound. And Alyssa and I would hold hands, and we would say this prayer, almost the same every single time. something along the lines of, God, we selfishly hope to hear our daughter's heartbeat today. But if that is not a part of your plan, please grant us the strength and the trust to do what we need to do as a part of your plan. And that was it. It allowed me and us to recognize our own selfish desires. We are human, and I maintain that the vast majority of the action that I take is selfish. I'm an alcoholic. I think that's going to take a long time to fully remove from myself. And so as I go through the practice of prayer, I don't want to fool myself. And I want to do the work of being able to recognize when I'm being driven by something that is fully selfish. And so I find a lot of comfort and I find a lot of value in saying Lucy's prayer and stating what I want. But it always has to be followed up with, please grant me the strength and understanding if this is not part of your plan, and let me do what I need to do as part of that plan. With all that said, I hope that you all can see and sense and feel that I am a work in progress. This is all a work in progress for me. Nothing here is said with absolute certainty. I have just found these things to work for me at this moment and time with regards to my experience and time in recovery. With that, back to the book. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." Coming out of the book quickly as we near the end here, these two sentences, in my mind, it is the saying within AA in recovery: just do the next best thing. Yes, you might screw up. You might become agitated. You might become disrupted or upset, but pause, recognize it, and then just do the next best thing. Don't let a misstep or what you feel like might be a mistake cascade into you just tail spinning out of control. Just pause, recognize it, and do the next best thing. Back to the book. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. And that concludes the chapter titled Into Action. Just a few notes on that last section, specifically about the part about not tiring so easily. So I'm gonna reread that. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. I cannot even begin to explain the amount of energy and effort I put behind attempting, one, to control things that I didn't control, but also as I continued to struggle and as I continued to feel completely out of control, I was agonizingly asking why and pursuing the understanding of why, which I think you can only truly step towards an understanding of why after you have taken the first 3 steps, where you are honest about the unmanageability of your life and you are open to a new way or a new path forward, and you are willing to do anything and everything to achieve that vision. I truly believe that only by taking those 3 steps can you even really begin to step towards an understanding of why. And it wasn't until I let go of the obsessive pursuit of understanding why did the understanding come to me. And the crazy thing about it is, before everything's really started to connect to me with regards to my story and my experience, I stopped caring about the why. And it was only after I let go did it come back to me. And so this is just, again, the unbelievable and incredible power that exists by doing work such as this, the 12 steps, again, being the most reliable and impactful recovery program and process that has existed in the last 100 years. That's all I've got. Love to y'all. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others or give us a rating on your channel of choice. My hope is that my story can help others in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life that they feel could be bettered. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. I cannot solve your problems for you, but I can listen. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and life is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you have to endure. Until next time, all the best.